Chapter 2. From Ujjayi to Kriya Pranayam. The enthusiasm for the art of pranayam was constantly growing. Undertaking this practice was like planting the seed of a mighty tree in the feverish season of my youth and contemplating its safe growth at other times of my life. Pranayam became my safe refuge when the trials of life conspired to wear away the basic joy which was my inherent nature. To abide by it was the decision of my life. I practiced morning and evening in an absolute way, with ferocious concentration, as if there were no tomorrow. The Kundalini experience happened again, several times but never became a constant. It took place especially when I devoted myself to study late at night and then lied supine on my bed. Whenever it appeared, my heart bubbled with infinite gratefulness to something higher, beyond my capabilities of understanding. In my beginner's zeal, I could not refrain from trying to convince other people of its benefits. I was convinced that it could help anyone to live in a better way. I declared that pranayam would harness their energies towards a more balanced side. My friends were polite while listening, but did not share my enthusiasm. Rather, they reacted, affirming that mine was not at all a state of emotional equilibrium. Closing myself in a room to practice yoga, abstaining from many aspects of social life, was a road toward alienation. I made a blunder by insisting on emphasizing some aspects of their behavior which I decided needed improvement. In short, I was telling them that their social life was a farce. This generated a violent reaction. They replied that my words were deprived of a genuine sense of respect and love, and that I was unable to show sympathy toward others. The essence of what I had found in pranayam, which I went on extolling unflinchingly, appeared to them as the pinnacle of egoism and even a real mental cruelty. Guilt-ridden, I saw I had provoked only bitterness. I also realized that, for purposes of my disquisition, I had taken advantage of their past confidential admissions. Only one friend, a hippie, understood perfectly what I was saying and showed me some empathy. To him, the only real problem was my excessive enthusiasm about the automatic benefits of pranayam. He had no doubts that my success in this practice depended wholly on me. In his opinion, pranayam was not an art bringing its own reward, but an amplifier of what I had inside, enhancing what I had already achieved. Pranayam, he said, could not create anything new. In my opinion, pranayam was an action of climbing toward a lofty state of consciousness whereby you achieved something radically new. I felt disoriented in listening that it was only an amplifier. I wasn't able to see that the two visions could coexist. I was young and I categorized everything as black or white. Great interest for a never-heard kind of pranayam, Kriya, yoga. I felt no immediate attraction for autobiography of a yogi. I did not find in those many pages one single clear practical instruction. Later I was struck by a fact. The author hinted at a particular form of pranayam, Kriya Pranayam, that was taught by a famous yogi, Lahiri Mahasaya, who was depicted as the embodiment of yoga. When I read that this technique had to be mastered through 4 stages, I thought that surely there must have been something unique in his way. I loved my technique of Ujjayi Pranayam, and the idea of improving a pranayam technique through different steps sounded wonderful. Considering that the simple breathing exercises I had already practiced had given me such incomparable results, it was obvious that the 4-level system of Kriya Yoga will produce greater result. That technique was secret. It had to be learned by direct initiation from a master. Where could I learn that? I was not in the condition to leave for India. I guessed that Kriya Pranayam had to be a sort of Ujjayi, but more complicated. Could I guess the technique from books? I went on reading whatever I could find about pranayam. My imagination ran wild and my fervor grew. I had good reasons to think that Kriya Pranayam consisted of slow and deep breathing with the awareness focused on the spine. During the Kriya process, The internal energy had to be rotated around the chakras. Since PY wrote that the Kriya technique was quoted in the Bhagavad Gita, I quickly tried to decipher the precise quote. Offering inhaling breath into the outgoing breath, and offering the outgoing breath into the inhaling breath, the yogi neutralized both these breaths. He thus releases the life force from the heart and brings it under his control. Bhagavad Gita 4:29. The Bhagavad Gita explains then that through the repetition of this action a yogi reaches a marked dying down of the breath. By perfecting this action, a yogi enters the state of meditation. With a pure heart he remains longer and longer established in a state of sublime peace. Steadfast a lamp burns sheltered from the wind, such is the likeness of the yogi's mind shut from sense storms and burning bright to heaven. Bhagavad Gita 6:19. I must admit that when I read line 429, I was not able to understand its meaning. How can one offer inhaling breath into the outgoing breath and offer the outgoing breath into the inhaling breath? Just for the curiosity of the reader, I try here to convey the meaning of this sentence, which was later clarified to me. During Kriya Pranayam, two opposite forms of energy interpenetrate continuously. Precisely, during inhalation you experience a form of energy entering the body with the air through the nose, coming down into pharynx, larynx, trachea, lungs. At the same time, another form of energy is coming up from the base of the spine, moving inside the spine, reaching the higher chakras. The energy going down with the fresh air is called prana. The energy coming up from the base of the spine is called apna. The two movements of energy happen simultaneously. Prana comes down inside the body, apna comes up inside the spine. During exhalation, the two forces change the role. Apna is in the consumed air leaving the body. Prana is in the current that from medulla enters the body and comes down along the spine. Apna moves again upwards, prana moves again downwards. But all is different. Apna guides the consumed air outside the body. Prana draws the divine current from medulla, guides it down, piercing each chakra, reaching the first chakra. So, what happens in Kriya? The sensations experienced during Ujjayi are internalized. In other words, they are experienced as internal phenomenon taking place in the spine and become the secret of Kriya Pranayam. Without this clarification, one remains blind and thinks that Ujjayi is so rough to be a spiritual tool. In order to internalize your awareness, you can mentally chant Om in each chakra going up, inhalation, and down, exhalation, along the spine. This mentally chanting of Om is simply an educational tool and help to make the described procedure more easy. I mean, you simply teach your awareness to be more disciplined, to patiently obey you by going up and down. What is written in the Bhagavad Gita happens both without chanting of Om and with chanting. What is important is that you be aware of what is happening in your spine. If you practice Ujjayi and internalize it, you are practicing Kriya. It is so simple. If you mentally put Om in each chakra, you have the same procedure, because chanting Om in the chakras does not transform Ujjayi in another tool. NB. The technique of Kriya Pranayam is patiently described in chapter 6. A good way to discipline yourself in practicing it deeply is described in chapter 12. After this clarification, let me return to the concepts that became clear to me at that time. PYs emphasized the evolutionary value of Kriya Pranayam. He explained that if we compare the human spinal column to a ferromagnetic substance constituted of elementary magnets that turn towards the same direction when they are overlapped by a magnetic field, as taught by physics, then the action of pranayam is akin to the process of magnetization. By uniformly redirecting all the subtle parts of our spinal cord's physical and astral essence, the Kriya Pranayam burns off the so-called bad seeds of karma. This is a key idea in the teachings of PY. Is it true? I cannot answer. I have not the means of answer. What matters to me is go deep in the practice of Kriya and see that the breath becomes more subtle and disappears. This happened to me after years of Kriya. But I never saw the elementary magnets. The only effect this concepts had is this. Because of that exciting description, I felt imperative to believe that the technique should be extremely complicated.